Welcome to the Long Way Through Scripture. I'm Catherine Schaefer. So this is a slow week-by-week walk through the Bible, taken without rush or pressure. Each week we'll gently orient ourselves to where we are in Scripture, what kind of ground we're walking on, and one simple reflection to carry with us as we read. This isn't a daily reading challenge or a checklist. You can start wherever you are, move at your own pace, pause when life gets full, or return later. There's no catching up required here, just the invitation to stay with the text, one passage at a time. I'm really glad you're here. So let's begin. We are week 9, Numbers 21 to 36, when the journey begins to turn towards home. As we move into the second half of Numbers, something subtle begins to shift in the atmosphere of the story. The wilderness is still present, the path still uncertain, but there's a sense that the direction is becoming clearer. The long season of formation has not ended, but it is beginning to give way to anticipation. The people are not yet in the land that was promised, but they are no longer standing at the same place where fear once held them still. These chapters carry a different emotional weight. The community has lived through years of wandering, loss, and learning. The tone is still complex, still deeply human, but it feels steadier somehow, as though the journey has shaped them into people who understand more about trust, even if they have not mastered it. The story opens with movement again, travel, conflict, and moments where the people face opposition along the way. There are victories, but even these moments are not framed as triumph in the way you might expect. They are reminders that the journey toward promise often includes resistance. Progress rarely unfolds without challenge, and yet the direction continues forward. One of the most striking moments early in this section is the story of the bronze serpent. The people once again find themselves overwhelmed, discouraged by the length of the journey and the strain of wilderness life. Their frustration surfaces in familiar ways, and the consequences are immediate and sobering. Yet even here, the story turns towards restoration. A way is provided for healing, a reminder that even in moments of failure, the path back is not closed. And there is something deeply symbolic in this scene. The people are invited to look, not to fix themselves, not to solve the crisis through their own strength, but simply to look toward the provision God has made. It is a quiet moment of grace in the middle of tension, a reminder that restoration often begins not with effort, but with attention. As the narrative continues, the people move closer to the land that has long existed as a promise on the horizon. They encounter kings, territories, and shifting political landscapes. The story begins to feel less like survival and more like preparation. They are no longer simply enduring the wilderness. They are learning what it means to step into what comes next. The story of Balaam appears in these chapters, bringing with it a tone that feels almost unexpected. A foreign prophet, a talking donkey, blessings spoken over a people who do not even realize they are being blessed. It is a moment that reminds us how often God's work unfolds beyond the awareness of those involved. While the people continue their journey, Unseen spiritual realities are unfolding alongside them. This part of the narrative carries a quiet reassurance. God's purposes are not limited by human perception. The people may not always see the ways they are being protected, guided, or blessed, but that does not mean those things are absent. The story invites us to consider how much of God's work happens beyond our immediate understanding. As the journey continues, the focus shifts toward preparation for entering the land. Boundaries are discussed, leadership transitions are anticipated. The community begins to look ahead with a sense that something new is approaching, even if the exact shape of it is still unfolding. There's also a deep sense of continuity. The next generation is coming into view, the ones who will carry the story forward. The wilderness has not been wasted time. It has been a season of shaping, learning, becoming a people who are ready to step into what God has promised. These chapters also hold moments of complexity and tension. Decisions are made about land, inheritance, about how the community will structure itself once they cross into a new chapter of their story. There's an awareness that the way they live together will continue to matter just as much as the destination itself. One of the most powerful undercurrents in this section is the idea that the journey is not only about reaching a place, it is about becoming a people. The wilderness has stripped away illusions, exposed fears, and revealed the need for dependence. Now, as the land comes closer into view, the question is not only whether they will arrive, but who they will be when they do. There's also a quiet sense of closure beginning to form. The long wandering that defines so much of their story is nearing its end. The tone is not triumphant or dramatic, but reflective, as though the narrative itself is pausing to acknowledge how far they have come. As you read these chapters this week, you may notice that the emotional landscape feels different from earlier sections. The intensity of fear and resistance has softened into something more reflective. There is still uncertainty, imperfection, but there's also a sense of direction that feels steadier than before. The wilderness is no longer only a place of testing. It has become a place of memory, a reminder of where the people have been and how they have been shaped along the way. The promise is no longer distant in the same way. It feels nearer, not only geographically, but spiritually. The reflection to carry with you this week is this: God's faithfulness continues even when the journey feels longer than expected. The story of Numbers reminds us that progress is not always linear. There are moments of resistance, growth, grace, and moments of waiting. But through it all, direction remains steady, guided by a presence that does not waver. So as you move through this section, you don't need to rush toward the end or try to tie every detail into a clear conclusion. Let the sense of transition settle in. Notice how the tone shifts from survival to preparation, from wandering to anticipation. Stay with the story as it begins to turn toward what comes next. The reminder that even long journeys have direction. The quiet reassurance that God's promises unfold over time, often more slowly than we expect, but never without purpose. And that is where this portion of the journey leaves us, standing on the edge of something new, shaped by the road behind us, and looking toward what lies ahead. So, friends, as you move into the reading this week, remember, there's no rush. Read slowly, read a little at a time, or simply sit with the passage if that's what the week allows. Scripture doesn't ask us to perform, it invites us to remain. And everything connected to this journey lives in the show notes. The full reading plan, the free 5-day Start Here guide, and ways to support the podcast through Patreon if you'd like to help it continue. Think of it as the little ecosystem that holds this whole project together. You can always find more information at catherineschaefer.com. And thank you for walking this long way with me. I'll meet you here again next week. Thank you.